Okay, we're going to get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Crystal Harris. I am the Alumni Relations Manager, and I'm a proud graduate of the class of 2015. I'm here to kick off the Loyal Hearts Business Forum event tonight, where we talk about some of the best alumni of St. Viator, about specific topics, tips, and tactics about the industries that they're in. A few housekeeping items before we begin. First, if you haven't already, make sure to drop your name, job, and what you do in the chat box. To all our alumni, feel free to include your class year. We love to encourage you guys to continue conversations after the event. So again, I'll be sending out a list of all the attendees and their emails as well after this. Secondly, we'd love to have this event be a conversation, so don't be afraid to put a comment or question in the chat. We're also going to open it up for a Q&A at the end, so please refrain from asking to be unmuted during the event and make sure to put your questions in so we can answer them. And lastly, I want to give a shout out to the Loyal Hearts Business Forum Committee for helping find our speakers for tonight, their insights and their inputs for tonight's event. So, all right, so I'm joined tonight with our moderator, Jen Culhane from the class of 2000. She's currently a senior client relationship specialist at Charles Schwab and currently is the vice chairperson on the Alumni Association board. Our Alumni Association board chairperson, Jim Platania, from the class of 2008 is also here tonight. So if you have any questions or concerns or ideas throughout the event, feel free to give them a message in the chat box or send them an email throughout the year. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Jen, to get started. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Crystal. So tonight's topic, pivoting in a pandemic world, very timely, obviously, for tonight's Loyal Hearts Business Forum. I am very excited to introduce our three panelists. First up, he's a proud owner of Boulevard Steakhouse downtown in Chicago, and he's truly valued the Viator network, especially while constructing his second restaurant, Rosemary. And he's done this just over the past couple months, also in downtown Chicago. We're happy to have him in our Alumni Association board this year as well. Steve Zaleski from the class of 2004. Thanks for joining us tonight, Steve. Next, he has been the proud owner and creative director for 14 years at Liven It Up Events, which is a full-service wedding, event planning, and production company based in Chicago and LA. And he is also the co-host of Talk Out Loud, which is a platform where the LGBTQIA+ community has center stage to tell their stories. Anthony Navarro from the class of 1999. Can't wait to talk to you more. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And then finally, last up, we have the president and CEO of Hosmark Hospitality Group, which manages over 400 hotels and resort properties in 2 countries and 13 states. He is truly a lion for life, sending 4 of his children through St. Viator. Jerry Cataldo, class of 1977. We could be 97 if you want.
Okay.
We'll go 97. Happy to have you here too, Jerry. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So let's jump into the discussion. I know there's a lot of questions that we have. I'm going to actually start with you, Anthony. Events are obviously something you know and love. So what was your initial reaction when all of this started to happen?
Yeah, so my initial reaction when this happened was it felt very reminiscent what was happening in 2008 when the stock market crashed and everything sort of went wonky back then, where the phone was ringing every day with all of our corporate clients canceling their events, not rescheduling, flat out canceling. We were getting ready to send a truck down to Atlanta for one of our regular clients to do a big install down there. And they called and they're like, we're not hosting the event. Like the truck was literally leaving the warehouse. So it felt familiar in some ways, because that was the same thing that happened in 2008 towards the end of the year. And I guess my initial reaction was confusion and a little unsure of how to react and what to think, because I was just like, okay, so we're gonna cease operations for like 2 weeks and then we're gonna get back up and running. And I was very confused when it happened, and it probably took a good 2 to 3 weeks to really let it sort of sink in and understand the severity of the issue. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I can definitely understand that. And I mean, going from one day business as usual to the next with COVID hitting so fast, Jerry, with you with so many properties to consider and so much behind the scenes to consider as well, what were your initial reactions and what were your first steps when the shutdown happened?
Well, I think our initial reactions to the spreading COVID situation and the pandemic initially was just how to protect our staff and have PPE to protect our staff and our guests even prior to the shutdown. So we started to focus on that, working within the hotel space, working with the brands, to work on how to come up with proper procedures and cleaning. But then when the shutdown hit, I mean, obviously it was, fairly striking as Anthony indicated. To see it, the number of hotels, although hotels were deemed essential businesses, many closed, either by choice of the ownership or by jurisdiction mandate in some instances. The immediate thing that we had to do as operators was to assess the financial impact of either staying open in a hotel space with minimal staff and minimal guests versus closing the hotel and what costs you would still be incurring with a closed facility, and do that financial analysis with obviously no understanding of how long and how deep and this was going to go. On the restaurant side, obviously Stephen will weigh in on this. I mean, it was, really unknown to close the restaurants and then have no idea as to when we were going to be allowed to reopen them and how were we going to handle our staff and what were the proper things to do, how to these are people's livelihoods, their health insurance, all kinds of things are being impacted, and what, as from an ownership standpoint, what should you do, what do you want to do, what you're capable of doing. So all of those things were hitting, and when you have numerous properties, and in our case numerous owners, we had to do that analysis for very wide variety of properties, locations, and owners.
Well, and to your point too, it's making that decision of just, this isn't on paper, these are people. So, for all of you, and Steve, we'll go to you next, but for all of you, it was probably weighing pretty heavy those first couple days. And to your point too, Anthony, you're working with the hotels for a lot of your events. So you two, I can just imagine the chaos in just the first couple days. Steve, obviously you're the proud owner of Boulevard in the West Loop of Chicago. How immediate was the impact for you, and how did you handle it?
So I can echo how Jerry and Anthony first felt. I don't think anyone in the restaurant industry or any business had any COVID plan out. So it kind of caught every business by surprise and kind of scrambling, to be honest. But we were forced to close within 24 hours. And everyone thought it was only going to last 2 weeks. So we were planning accordingly to a 2-week plan. Can we keep everyone on staff? Yes. Can we keep up health insurance benefits? Yes. Do we furlough? Do we not? And those first 48 hours it was just on the fly, making very, very difficult and big decisions.
Mm-hmm.
What to do with all the extra food and
Right.
inventory in the cooler. We carry about $12,000 at any given time in food, and now you're closed for 2 weeks. What do you do with it? So we started looking at doing some, can we donate it? Can we do family meals for the staff to come pick up maybe twice a week? And, the insurance they should cover, but they're not covering anything in any of this. So it just had a big, big impact. And the biggest thing we were forced to do was transition to takeout, because we never did takeout at Boulevard Steakhouse. So that was a whole nother beast to try to figure out, to get Uber Eats in, to get Talk in, to get, what's the other one? DoorDash. Yeah. So
DoorDash, Grubhub, yeah.
so it was about 5 days, and then we finally got up and running. But yeah, it was. I'll remember those for those 48 hours for the rest of my life.
Yeah, no, I bet for all three of you. One thing, this is a question that I kind of had as I'm thinking about each one of your industries. They had implemented things pretty quickly as far as restrictions were concerned, but they didn't really have a whole lot of solutions. So when you were saying, that was something my group of friends would talk about. We'd say, oh, I wonder if the restaurants are able to donate food, but there were even restrictions on what you could and couldn't donate. And I can just imagine that must have been difficult for all of you. So Jerry, for your company, Hosmark, you have both hotels and restaurants. What would you say was the biggest difference then between maybe the reaction to the two, or you just had to go full steam on corrections for both?
We had to go. We didn't have the luxury of time to try to, differentiate which ones we had to address first. We had to address everything all at the same time. So we created strategic teams to obviously concentrate on various assets and what was the solutions for those. And Stephen pointed out exactly correct that at Carnival Restaurant in the West Loop, we wound up opening to our staff and had them come in and be able to take food and don't, rather than donate. We opted to hopefully support the staff that was undoubtedly going to be out of work for some period of time. And so all of those questions had to be answered as best that we could under the situation. Again, the restaurants were in Chicago and in other places were forced to close. And as Stephen said, we had to then pivot. And at Carnival, we never had takeout service as well. We never had we had a small deck, but we really didn't have outdoor seating. So, over the course of the first month or so, while things were up in the air, we're trying to create plans and solutions for various situations. Are we going to be open and only for outdoor? Are we going to be open for indoor and outdoor? How do we create a takeout program that we didn't have before?
Sure.
And restaurants like Boulevard and Carnival were not really considered a takeout place. They're special
experience. Yeah.
Right, experience. So it was difficult. Again, the hotels, it was really concentration on the stay open or close scenario. It's interesting. We had some owners in Chicago. We have 3 hotels in downtown Chicago. 2 of them stayed open. One of them closed for a number of months. And the interesting thing is we're now going through the same exercise again, because we're coming into fall and we're coming into winter, and conventions are still being canceled, and there's no clarity as to when groups and meetings could happen again. So now we're forced to reassess: should we close the hotels again? Is it more financially draining to keep them open, or are we contributing something to offset some of the costs? There's massive losses on the hotel side, massive.
Yeah. And that's a great point. And that's something we'll touch on a little later in our discussion. But I mean, obviously, we thought maybe some of this was behind us, and now all of a sudden there's new restrictions that are going into place. So, So Anthony, Jerry mentioned how he had the different locations, different requirements, different things he kind of had to navigate between those two. Can you talk a little bit about how Liven It Up events and maybe other colleagues in your event industry have pivoted, but you personally, how you guys have pivoted first?
Sure. So I think there's an echo. Do you hear the echo? Okay,
no,
then it's just on my end. So
no worries.
Great. So at first, like Jerry and Stephen said, it was just sort of this juggle of figuring out what to do, how to do it. Can we reopen? Can we host these events? I know, like I said, first March, all of those, we were able to get through we were able to do our last wedding for 250 people on March 14th. It was the last Saturday we were able to do anything. And then we went into shutdown. So after that, everything slowly, we kept seeing reschedule or cancel. And we had to look and say, like, be honest with, what was happening. Like, we kept saying, okay, in June we'll be able to do events. In July, maybe September, maybe it's January 21. So we eventually realized, with very little information, or guidance, I should say, that we were not going to be able to host in-person events. We are fortunate enough that we have really strong relationships with different vendor groups, different companies that work all over the country, some all over the world. And the really, I think, great thing about the hospitality industry, the event industry, is when you throw something at us, when you have people around you, we rally together, we come together. And one of the things, 3 of our AV partners came to us and they said, we are building out virtual event studios inside our warehouses. Wow. or just creating remote or virtual control rooms to be able to facilitate virtual events. So once we found out that we had the sources to go to be able to partner with these relationships that we've already had, we just had to learn how to take our event planning, skill sets in our corporate team and mold those sets and to be able to produce virtual events. So I would say it probably took, it was about a month after everything shut down when we realized we weren't going to be able to do live events anymore. And then that's when some of our partners, that's when they started reaching out. And then on our end, we started retooling our services, our packages. There was a quick blitz that we did for marketing and PR. We got some press out about it. Website had to get updated. And then on the same end, because we have 3 different divisions. We have a corporate, we have a wedding division, and then we have a social. So we then were doing all this work on virtual events. We knew that we could produce smaller gatherings. Mm-hmm. So we did, in working through virtual events, at the same time, our wedding team conceptualized micro wedding packages, which we started selling in May. So it took us about 2 months to really kind of get up and running. But if we didn't do that, I'm not quite sure where we would be, because our wedding team was able to work on smaller projects all through the summer. We actually have a wedding, our last wedding of the year now is next weekend, Halloween weekend. So, that's been really great. And our virtual events, we were able to, we just blitzed and did a marketing blitz, and we reached out to our former clients, and we were just lucky enough that enough people were interested in working with us. Last week, one of my former clients, we normally do we do an in-person event, a conference. It's about 2,500, 3,000 people live. Mm-hmm. And last week, we were able to produce a 1-day summit for them for 2,300 people. So it was really great. And also lucky enough that Aldi grocery store called. We were able to produce their holiday showcase for them, which, it's just thinking quickly and adapting our services and tooling our teams and our working with our vendors to kind of figure this stuff out on the fly. I mean, there were things where clients were asking questions that we had not thought all the way through because we hadn't been in that situation yet. And it was just sort of figuring things out for people. And making people do what we do, make our clients happy, make the event go off without a hitch. But yeah, that's what we were able to do.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely wonderful. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, and Anthony, I definitely feel for you because we have an event space at Boulevard, and we had about 12 weddings planned this year, and all but 1 were canceled. Mm-hmm. And dealing with brides and a groom, can you only imagine during COVID, it was even extra emotional for a lot of people. And the rules continuing to change is what made it the hardest
Yeah.
to host an event.
Right.
And that those people feel like it's their space, it's their wedding. They
Yeah.
don't have to wear a mask when they stand up. They don't have to abide by the rules. And it's a very difficult situation to manage.
It is. Yeah, I feel like everyone has sort of said this, and I think it's just important to point out. I think the hardest thing that I know, at least for us, that we had was everything kept changing, and there was never enough solid information to say this is what we should do. If it was said that, okay, we need to we can't do gatherings for over 50 people for 6 months, we know that for sure, or 3 months, even just putting a time limit on it. If we would have had some indication, I think that emotional response that people had, like Steve was talking about, like that would have made it a little bit easier. I think for everyone, I mean, planning a wedding is stressful to begin with. Planning an event is stressful to begin with. But when you're operating from the unknown, it just creates fear. And when you're operating out of fear, you're just not making the right decisions. So we were constantly checking ourselves and making sure that when we were making decisions, we were making them based not out of fear, but out of taking as much of the facts that were available at the time, as much of that information, and making decisions based on that.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that really hit early on in this crisis was when obviously the stimulus of the PPP program and so forth was announced. There was tremendous uncertainty of how it would work, what banks were going to participate, how you would apply, how you calculate how much you should get, what the forgiveness rules were going to be, how it could be used, and in the beginning there was a lot of conflicting information, and then all of a sudden there was a lot of people that were so-called experts telling you what it meant, and they weren't always correct, and so we had to make some extremely intense decisions for places like the restaurant, where we had to make decisions of how we were going to apply, and once we got those funds, how we were going to utilize those and allocate them. And then the program initially was set up for an 8-week period, and Stephen knows this well. That doesn't work at all for the restaurant industry. When those 8 weeks, we were all going to be closed. So should you pay your staff for 8 weeks when you're not open and they're not working, or should you hold those proceeds and utilize it post-opening for a period of time? And fortunately, we made the right decisions and knew that there was more than likely going to be changes to the program, and we did so, and hopefully have utilized those funds and maximized the use of those funds to help bridge the gap. But it was a very, all those type of things, and even some of the other loans available for disaster relief and so forth are very, very confusing.
Yeah. Well, so then kind of along those lines where we were talking about, obviously the cost involved for all of this has been astronomical. And I know, Steve, with you having Rosemary now on the cusp of opening and now things changing, how has this impacted maybe your costs since March and how you're planning for the new concept with Rosemary?
Yes, so with costs, even just the new costs in general for, let's say, Boulevard, start there. Everyone's aware of, there's obviously the thermometers, there's the face masks, additional chemicals, things like that. But I think the biggie that people don't really realize is all the existing consumable products, right? So for example, chefs have to wear, and even line cooks have to wear black nitrile gloves anytime they're dealing with meat and poultry and fish. And we go through 100 boxes a month. Well, those pre-COVID were $4 a box. They are now $17 as of 2 weeks ago, and as of today, $23.
Oh my goodness!
And that's food that's by code. And so if a food inspector walked in, and, they don't have gloves on, you're getting dinged for that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's $15,000 to $20,000 just in gloves a year. And I'm talking with hospitals; they can't even get them. They're paying the same prices. So, there's definitely still not enough PPE out there. That's just, that's one example. I talked to one of my meat vendors today. Prices, my ribeyes went up 25%. And I said, well, what's going on? It's not the holidays yet. Well, a lot of the national chains are locking in pricing now to guarantee that they have enough meat come Christmas time. So now it's affecting, my prices. I can't charge $95 for a bone-in ribeye because, anyone that comes in to dine there, they're going to be like, this place is way overpriced, not understanding, the supply demand curve. So it's very interesting. And then when it comes to the new restaurant, Rosemary, which we're opening, should be March 2021. We partnered with Chef Joe Flam from, he won Top Chef season 15. So it's a pretty exciting project, but we delayed 6 months before we decided to move forward in August this year. And, we keep getting asked, are you guys changing anything? Are you adding, COVID-19, different HVAC systems, things like that? No one knows the future. So it's hard to know in 6 months what's going to be required. I'd hate to build out a space that's going to cost it's a lot of money to build out a restaurant. I'm not going to spend an additional hundreds of thousands for something that might change because it's not even an issue anymore. Maybe there's more treatments, maybe they allow different things. So we're keeping that in our minds as we're building this out, but we're not making any huge rational decisions at this point.
Got it. So I'm going to take a brief pause. I'm going to check in with Crystal. Crystal, if you can hear me, I don't know if we have any questions that we might want to take from the group chat right now, or if you'd like to wait till we get in a little deeper.
Yeah, of course. So we actually have a question.
Crystal, if you could speak up just a little bit as well. Sorry, I'm having a little difficulty hearing you.
No, that's okay. So Lisa Fulton actually asked, she said, how do you see your industry changing permanently? What new business models will spring from the pandemic?
Can you repeat it one more time, just a little bit louder? Use your theater voice. Mrs. Calzaretta would always tell me, use my theater voice. So
Lisa asked, how do you see your industry changing permanently? And what new business models will spring from the pandemic?
Okay. Maybe Anthony, we'll start with you first.
Sure. So I think being in the virtual space, sort of out of this in-person, doing in-person events or live events for a while, I think as soon as it is allowed for people to gather again, everything in the event world is going to go back to normal, so to speak. I think people are not built to sit behind a computer screen and interact with one another as much as we try. I mean, we've been really creative this year. We've done for some of our corporate clients, we've done with celebrity chefs who have done like cooking demos where we've sent, boxes of food where, people get to cook at home along with Wolfgang Puck and, all of that. And that's great. And it's fun and exciting, but you can't create that interaction that people get when they're with each other. So I know for live events, I know that once it's okay, things are going to go back to normal. What might happen though is, especially with like conventions, meetings, that kind of stuff, there may be an additional element where every event will have like conferences will have like a virtual ticket option, so that this way, if your schedule doesn't allow for you to travel, away from work, or there's a company that really wants to get their employees to some conference for the education, but that's all that they can afford and they want to do it virtually, that could be what that is. But we've come to, find out to do a very successful virtual event, it costs just as much, if not more, than doing a live event. So, just kind of have to see how those costs outweigh themselves in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone really knows, how long this is going to go. Especially, there's a lot of, people will say, oh, it's remote world's here to stay. I definitely think there's aspects of that they're going to stay in general.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, people like to interact. Restaurants are going to exist. That's where people go to celebrate and and get away and kind of check out from normal life. That's why we created Boulevard. You kind of walk in, get transported to a different world, kind of forget about all your problems. So at the end of the day, restaurants will exist. There are going to be potentially some changes. For example, which there's some good changes that I think are going to happen with all this going on and the limitations. For example, something for all you guys out there is, I'd probably start getting used to like a 4% surcharge on all checks. We've been charging that since we reopened. A lot of the big restaurant groups are charging that. We're not getting much pushback at all from people, but it's gotta help offset some costs and make up for some of this. So there's definitely going to be some things that stick, but who knows what the future is going to hold here.
Yeah, and in the hotel space, I'll speak to that because it's a little different than the restaurant world. And I do think, we have a lot of different locations ranging from resorts to business class hotels and convention city hotels down to select service and boutique. The transient leisure driven markets and locations actually have done much better than the locations like downtown Chicago or downtown San Diego that are dependent on conventions and large groups and so forth. And I think that exemplifies what Anthony was saying, that people want to get together. And that's the first aspect of people, taking advantage of and coming back. I think the real problem for the hotel space is going to be on the corporate side for several years. Companies have, number one, pulled back. Many companies have suffered a lot of financial problems themselves in their own businesses. They're not going to rush out just because a vaccine is here and say, okay, everybody can go back traveling. And we realized that last year we saved X millions of dollars in travel costs and meeting expenses. Maybe we don't have to spend that, right? We can do more Zoom calls for a while. We can restrict people's travel. And by the way, financially, we can't race back to this. So I do think hotels are going to lag in recovery, with the exception of the leisure and transient side, the leisure side of the business, the vacation side of the business, the resort side of the business. I think those will come back faster. But the corporate meetings, the corporate travel and so forth, that's going to lag for quite some time. I do think we're going to see changes in the operation of hotels to a certain extent. How do, in select service, what do you get for breakfast? How are those breakfasts served? How are they going to be, what are you going to get? How is it going to be handled? What people are going to be involved? Those may change for permanently in different ways. I certainly think that there's going to be a push for technology and less touch points that will continue. It was already happening prior to the pandemic, and those things will just get accelerated as well. So there's going to be a number of changes, but I think a recovery for the hotel sector, particularly in the corporate and business side, is going to be longer.
Yeah. So Jerry, just building on that. So I completely agree with you. We have a steady flow of corporate clients that we handle. We've been handling their events for years. So really good relationships with our clients, and we're very lucky. We're able to just have these open and honest conversations with them. I will say the one thing that I'm hearing from them is any company that is client-based. So where they're selling their product or they're selling a service, they are eager to get back to traveling. They're eager to get back. So this week, I was talking to one of our clients in the financial. They're in the financial world, and she did a trip to visit a client. And when she went back and talked with her team, they realized there's so many different things that you're not able to do through these virtual cocktail hours, and how important it is. Those little side conversations that you have with your client or someone who you're doing business with when you're at a cocktail party or you're out to dinner or what it is. So I I definitely agree with you. I think once restrictions start easing up, I think that's in the corporate world. I think that's what we're going to see first. So when the trade shows slowly start getting started, or for us, like our clients that that host like after convention networking parties, the convention might not be happening anymore, but they may still host, you know, a gathering to bring in their clients so that they can have that one-on-one touch point. So
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, I think I agree wholeheartedly that, you know, just human nature, we want to get together, we want to interact, and it'll come back. I'm not saying it won't come back. I just think it's going to, on the hotel side, it's going to take longer.
Yeah.
And with the exception of the leisure element of it. And you know, we just have to be prepared for that. We had an owner's budget session today where we presented a budget for hotels to an owner for 2021. Okay, you know, take a dart, throw it at the board. I mean, how do you predict how much your occupancy is going to be and what your average rate is going to be in a hotel for next year? We don't know what the rules are. But yet you have to make a plan, and you have to have, the most important part of that plan is flexibility. How are you building in flexibility and the ability to pivot, according to what's happening? And that's really the companies and the groups like yours that are on, here. What you are doing and why you are surviving is you're nimble, you're creative, and you're flexible. And I would say you're passionate about what you do. And that's what's made you successful initially. That's what's going to keep you successful going forward. And it's what's going to make you come out of this being a winner versus the ones that don't survive.
Very a perfect example of constantly having to pivot. Today, you know, Chicago and Lightfoot announced, 10 o'clock, everyone has to be out of bars and restaurants, and 9 o'clock, you have to stop serving alcohol, as effective as of starting tomorrow. Well, I have 200 something covers tomorrow and 200 something covers on Saturday, and plenty of reservations after 9 o'clock. So, all these people, it's just a constant roller coaster. And like Jerry said, you just got to try to plan, obviously be very conservative while you're planning out your business plan or planning out the next year for your financials. But yeah, it's been a ride.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate, you guys have given us so much information tonight. Thank you for sharing, because I know, it's easy to just talk about it, but in the moment, I'm sure this is very overwhelming, especially with the most recent changes for you guys as well. So being that I'm someone who works in, I'm going to change the subject, being someone that works in wealth management, I'm always looking for a good opportunity. So do you guys feel that within the industry, if someone was looking to invest or, to try and help out small businesses, do you find any opportunities that may be available or that you've come across?
Well, I think, in the hotel space, there's a lot of investment equity on the sidelines right now. And most of that is waiting for the distress. They're waiting for the hotels to go back to the lenders. They're waiting for the pain to, have people capitulate and throw in the towel. And, there's going to be winners and losers. There's clearly going to be, just like in the downturn that Anthony referred to before. And if you're old enough like I am, you remember the days of the RTC when all kinds of assets were sold in big groups by the government to unload them. And the people that were aggressive and had vision, really made out very well, because we all learn in business school to buy low and sell high, but the reality is most people get excited when things are frothy, and they all want to own a hotel when the hotels are all doing tremendous, and you have to pay the highest price for them, and it doesn't make sense. Actually, now I don't know how much lower we can get in the hotel business, so we don't have to time the bottom precisely. I think if you're prudent and you invest in good locations and quality product, ultimately you're going to be a big winner. So yeah, I absolutely do think there's going to be opportunity coming down the pike in the hotel space. Restaurants is a little harder to predict. But there will be opportunities there for people to step in and create new concepts where old ones had failed and they couldn't make it and survive. So maybe the basis of getting into that project is going to be lower, and it's going to be beneficial to be successful.
Exactly. And that's where I see a lot of opportunity. There is a lot of unknowns and questions, about specifically the, restaurants. But the same concerns that Jerry's having with hotels, there's going to be plenty that go belly up. Same with restaurants. And there's some prime locations that, the landlord can't just sit for years and years with no tenant in there. So if you can scoop up something pretty cheap in the West Loop on a prime corner for 50% off and lock in a 10-year lease, you're going to be, sitting pretty in 4 or 5 years if we get out, or when we get out of all this.
When? Yes, I like that. If not, no,
Yeah.
when.
What?
Like new businesses where, even events like Anthony, you're talking about, we're seeing even companies that want to bring in like their executive team to their house and do a private dinner with the chef. So now, you're charging 5-10 grand for it, but now there's more in people's homes, they're bringing an executive chef or chef plus a couple sous chefs, and they're paying a pretty penny. We prepare the food at the restaurant and bring it. There's different opportunities, and there's all these ghost kitchens that are getting built where it's just for takeout strictly. There's one big one going up in the city of Chicago. That's definitely going to be here to stay, is delivery. Everyone loves watching Netflix and pushing a couple buttons and getting hours.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and let me know. I will definitely make sure that I attend. I will bring friends, but yeah, no, I think that's great. Really quick for everyone in our audience, I know you guys are asking a lot of questions. Anyone who does submit a question, even if we don't have the chance to get to it tonight, will win a gift card from Steve's new restaurant, Rosemary, as it comes up. Crystal, did you have any specific questions from the audience that you wanted us to touch on before we kind of wrap up with some final ones?
Let me take a look here. I changed my mics. Hopefully you can hear me.
You're
better.
muted.
Hear me?
You're still muted. You can chat it to me. You look lovely. I'll give you that. You look absolutely lovely.
Can you hear me a little bit better or no? No? Okay.
No. You can chat it to me if you'd like. I'm going to keep moving forward with my questions then, if everybody is okay with that. So I think, this is something the 3 or 4, 5, 6 of us have kind of talked earlier this week. The hospitality industry is something dear to me as well, because I've always, bartending, waitressing in between jobs and college. There's a different understanding in that industry. And I think each one of you kind of touched on that. How has the support from the industry really made this a little bit easier through the last couple months? What support, even personally, what support have you had, and how has that made a difference? And anyone can start.
I could start. I was new to the industry 4 years ago, and the hospitality industry is something special. And during this pandemic, especially the first month, it was incredible the amount of people that came together. I was hopping on Zoom calls with a bunch of owners, in the city of Chicago that I previously never talked to, because everyone was trying to figure this out. Everyone was asking, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's how we're going to furlough or hang on to the employees, but still offer benefits. And like, it was just, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, because it was really something special, and something that I've never been really a part of in other careers. So to me, that was unexpected to me. And it was just amazing to see people helping other people during time when they are crippled. They're still cooking. We're doing homeless dinners. We are helping out all the staff, cooking for everyone still. It's not, it's just something that it's hard to explain, but I know it goes across to Jerry and to Anthony. And one of the most important things after all of this, what I've also kind of learned during this pandemic, is not even just hospitality, is really surround yourself with great people. My 2 owners, I would have gone crazy if I didn't have them, because we were making some very, very difficult decisions coming to firing, to closing down, to, I mean, these were big conversations that all had to be made within 24 hours.
Right.
So I'd say that one of the most important things I've learned through all this is to definitely surround yourself with great people. Our management team is awesome. And then we created just a great culture with all our staff. If we didn't have them, our 80 people, it was, we wouldn't be where we're at now and reopened.
Yeah. Well, and I think when we were talking the other day too, you had some, I don't think I can see them in the background this time, but you had some actual support in-house too, right?
Yes. Yes. My little one and my wife.
Yeah. I got to give them the shout out too, because they probably had to deal with some cranky days and tough decisions too.
At 3 o'clock when the notice came out about the new restrictions.
Oh yeah. My goodness. Yeah. Yeah. Anthony, do you want to go ahead and comment about your support system?
Yeah. I mean, so like Steve was saying, I mean, the restaurants, hotels, events, we're all in the same pot. I was not shocked at how quickly the event planning community came together, and not just on a local level, on a national into an international level. So it was Zoom calls with people. I was having Zoom calls with people from all over the world, listening to what people were doing. On a local level, there were groups, kind of going back to what Jerry said earlier about PPE versus EIDL versus grants and other funding sources. Oddly enough, there were two very well-known wedding photographers in Chicago who both, before they became photographers, they were both in finance, and they were strategic in educating people within the industry. You're talking, we're working with people who are, a lot of creative people, which they, finance is not their strong point. Being creative is what they do. So having, that support system and having them lead, Zoom calls and education seminars, walking people through how to fill out applications. I wasn't surprised. I know I've been doing events for a long time. I've had Liven It Up for 14 years, but I started in restaurants and hotels when I was a kid with my family. So I've been around the block for a long time, and I just know how people come together. I would also say to, so my business partner is my husband, and it was challenging, I would say, that first month or so, just on our, testing our relationship, but being able to lean on one another and make the right decisions. If we, there's some days where I was having the good day, he wasn't. He was having a good day, I wasn't. And being able to have that support system really was important through all of this. I will say, if I had to compare this overall support system that I had during this, it sort of is reminiscent of what my experience was at Vider. I know, like my class, like Jen, like our class, we were friends. We were close friends. Yep. So I mean, having those strong relationships way back when, it's something that's unique. I don't know. I talk to other people, and if you're not a Vider alum, you just don't get it. So, and I think it's a very unique bond that a lot of people have. And it was reminiscent of that, where people just kind of came together and did whatever they had to do to help each other out to get through this. So.
And Jerry, would you like to comment as well?
Yeah, I think the most, there's business and there's personal, right? On the business side, I think we have an outstanding team of executive leadership, and more importantly, I was very impressed on how the staff, at the location, the property level locations, came together. I mean, there's far less staff now. They're doing more. They're all doing more things. We have general managers that are prepping food in the kitchen and seating people and doing all kinds of things and working, infinitely more hours because there's no other way to do it. But you know what? It's amazing how that passion and the sort of the will to, hey, we're going to get through this. We're in this together. It's been, that part has been amazing, and the support of throughout the the organization, both above property and at the property, has been amazing. Personally, without family, you're putting in all these hours, you're pulling out what little hair I have left, trying to figure out how we're going to survive and how, these properties are going to survive, and being able to come home and depend upon family has been, saving grace in this whole thing. That's been good. But no, I think, there's a lot of decisions that we've had to make in this whole crisis and continuing the crisis. And some are good ones, some are bad ones, because you're making decisions sometimes without adequate information. So how do you then pivot from a bad one and reassess and come back? And that's been the challenge in this. And without good people and support, I don't know that we would be able to survive it. And you really see the cream rise to the top when you're in this type of adversity. When everything is great and we're all rolling along, it hides some people and some people's faults. But when you're in something like this, you really see who shines.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you all for sharing that, because I know some of it is personal as well. I'm looking at some of the questions we have in the group chat, and I think some of these you through our questions already, you guys have covered. But I know one from one of the Droles, I know there's several. Has your staff remained loyal, or have they gone off to other jobs? It seems like you guys have had a lot of support, but I'm sure that there has been some attrition as well. If you guys, I know we're coming up on time, if you guys want to talk about that just briefly.
Well, from my perspective, it's been far less than I thought it would be. I think that the teams have been extremely loyal, and we have had some. There's been some people that have left the industry and just said, "Hey, look at that, I'm going to take this opportunity to pivot in my personal life and so forth." And from our perspective, we support that. We the first and foremost is people's. It's people and in our industry, and so. If somebody is better suited or needs to try something new, we've been supportive of that. We've actually had some people that said they were going to do that and come back. So it's interesting. But for the most part, I think people have been really loyal, and what we've found.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were able to bring back, we laid off 80 people. We only were able to bring back about 35, but all 35 were from who we laid off. And there was a couple challenges in the meantime, because you have to remember the government was paying everyone $600 every single week in addition. So that's close to $4,300 a month. Some of these, food runners and dishwashers, they don't come close to making that normally. So, they would refuse or just not want to come back. But, I just don't think everyone understood the program. If you get offered a full-time job, you got to go back. Otherwise, the benefits do get declined. But it was the staff's been very loyal. Our whole management team is still with us, so caught me off guard.
Anthony, do you have any quick comments on that?
The same thing with what was just said. So very lucky. My whole team is still intact. So a couple people have had to do. Everyone's kind of got to do what they got to do right now. But work an odd job or part-time job. But there's something with the team members that we have, the dedication to the clients. They don't want to let clients down. We have as of right now, there's a full book of events ready to go for 2021 into 2022. And they're just dedicated to the clients. They're dedicated to the work. So, when we can, they're going to get, they're going to come back. So.
Good. That's great to hear. There are two questions that I would really like to touch on. I know we'll probably go over just a minute or two. Is everyone okay with us just finishing up these last two questions? I want to be respectful of your time. So Jim Platania had a really great question. Have you felt that you've had any kind of voice through this in terms of the restrictions imposed by the state of Illinois?
I'm kind of in maybe a little bit of a unique position. I'm the chair of the Illinois Hotel Lodging Association. So through the association, yes, the answer is yes. We've participated with the Restaurant Association and other entities with both the city of Chicago and as well as the state. Not always, not always pleasant conversations, but we've had a voice as industries at the table. Even in these last restrictions, initially the city here wanted to basically shut down restaurants again, and so there was a lot of advocating for, hey, could we maybe take this in steps and see if we can, moderate what those restrictions are and see if it has an effect on what's happening. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, everybody wants people to be safe and healthy, but we also know that you're not going to be safe and healthy if there's no jobs and there's no business. So there's no easy answer. We certainly, I wouldn't want to be a mayor or the governor right now, to be honest with you, but because everybody's not happy with you, but we have had a seat at the table in many ways.
Any other comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, I know with the live events industry, it's sort of been a wake-up call because, there is no association that just specifically for live events, it has any kind of seat at the table on a local level, a state level, or national level. I know, again, though, there are now groups that are forming, coalitions that are forming all across the country that are, hopefully going to be able to get those seats at the table. But I think what this did was, for a long time, live events maybe were not looked at as a serious industry. And, after you look at the numbers of, the number of people that work in live events, I think that the statistics are it's 12 million people are employed in the live event industry. And I think of like 2 years ago, there was something like 12 or $15 billion generated by the industry itself. So wow. I think what it's done is it's legitimizing what it is that we've been doing. It's a young industry. It's only, 30 or 40 years old. But I think what it is forcing the industry as a whole to do is to take ownership and, get those coalitions formed so that if anything like this or anything, similar that will affect live events in the future, that we could definitely have that seat at the table. But also just want to say too, thankfully for hotels and restaurants being so tied to what they do, I know both of those organizations have been really great advocates for us as well. So
I think they're going to be more important as ever going forward because beyond the pandemic, I think we're going to, as a hospitality industry and the components of it, we're going to face a lot of challenges legislatively, as well as other things, and tax wise. And this is not going to be easy in the long run for any of us or any business or any industry or any city or any local municipality. It's going to have a lot of rough road ahead to pay for all of the things that are going on now. So, having a seat at the table, being willing to compromise is important. You can't always just say no. We're going to need that. So there's organizations like the Restaurant Association, the Hotel Association are critical now, and they're going to be even more critical going forward.
Yeah, I think the whole industry in the limelight, because it does employ 10, 11, 12 million people, and I think it's starting to have a trickle effect, and people are starting to see this in general in the economy. But yeah, I mean, we were on multiple voice recordings by the senators of Illinois and things like that, fighting for a seat at the table for us. I mean, we were literally on calls and conference calls with the senators. So it's definitely made a change, and we're making some headway. And luckily, we have some good advocates in the industry that are really almost quitting their jobs to do this full time to make a statement for us.
Awesome. One final question, we'll wrap up with this one. If everyone could just be a little brief. I know this is a loaded question, so I probably shouldn't have left it to the end, but it was from the chat box. You guys have talked an awful lot about some of the best decisions you've made. What would you say was your best decision? And what would you say is a decision that you might have made differently now that you look back on it? And we'll actually start with Steve.
Best decision definitely was initially, as Gary touched on, the PPP funds had to be used in the first 8 weeks, which was starting March 16th when all restaurants were forced to close. And by law, we weren't able to open until June. So if we were to use all that in the first 8 weeks, we would have gone a month and a half and just been out of pocket. So the best thing that we did that the government changed middle of the way is they made that 8-week period to 24-week period. So we just got finished with those funds 5 days ago. So that was definitely by far the best decision to spread that out. What would I change differently? Oh man, that's a tough one. I would probably try to keep some additional staff on. So we furloughed all our hourly employees and went skeleton crew. Our management team just ran delivery 7 days a week because we're paying them in full salaries. So I probably would have tried to hire maybe five or so of them back on just to help out.
Okay, Anthony.
So best decision was pivoting to modifying the services we offer. So virtual events and micro weddings. It is, along with the other funding that we were able to get, it's what is carrying us through and into next year. So a decision that I wish I could change or have maybe handle it.
Recorded.
What's that?
Something that you can say that's going to be recorded.
Yeah. So the thing that I maybe would do is or go back and maybe change. I think in that first week, I would say it was early March. So when things started happening, things started canceling. I was reacting to the situation and not assessing what was happening and being able to make decisions. Luckily, my business partner was able to, keep a calm head during that time. And, together we were able to make those decisions. But looking back, I think that was probably the toughest time for me during this whole thing, was that just that initial sort of shock, kind of of course you can have the event. We're good. Why are you canceling it? So I think looking back, maybe just being able to handle that for myself better.
Okay, and Jerry?
Well, Steve answered the same question on the restaurant side. I would have, the decisions we made on the PPP and the restaurant side were spot on. The other great decision I think we made was we got out ahead of, before our owners even realized they needed to make the analysis. I alluded to it earlier. It was deciding which hotels should close, which should remain open, doing the financial analysis as to, it could be actually less costly to close the hotel than to actually keep it open, or vice versa. So we were ahead of that game for our owners when they didn't even realize that they should be doing that. So they were very happy that we did so. I think that was the best decision. That decision I wish I would have made, I probably would have added resource on the financial analysis side, knowing how much time and effort we've had to put into that for all of these things. It just, we didn't know it. Hindsight is 2020. We could have used more resources in analyzing PPP and applying for those loans and making all of these analysis. So that I wish I would have had the foresight to see that was where we were going to have trouble.
Mhm. Yeah, no, those are all valid points. One quick thing, I know that we're running out of time, or we're out of time. One more thing I'd just like to touch on, we all mentioned in one way or another this unique support system we had. And I think at this time, everyone's mental health is a bit of a roller coaster. So having the three of you here, along with the other associates on the board, our alumni network, we're a very unique community, as Anthony kind of touched on. So hopefully everyone on our call tonight and everyone who does view this has the chance to realize you're not alone. We're on the roller coaster with you. And we're always here to welcome, old and new faces, and especially the new challenges together. So before we part ways tonight, make sure to check out the upcoming alumni events. There may have been a slide. I don't know if Crystal's able to get that slide up, but you will be receiving a post-event email as well after we conclude. And if you could please take a couple minutes to fill out the survey we have so that we can keep improving on these events in the future and explore topics that matter the most to you guys. So thank you all, Jerry, Anthony, Steve, thank you all for being here tonight. It was wonderful. Special thanks to Jim and Crystal for your help with this too. Everyone stay safe, stay healthy, and we look forward to seeing you at our next Loyal Hearts Business Forum.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.